Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Luke Cattell. Luke, we have just seen Daniel Dubois stop Anthony Joshua in round five of their massive fight at Wembley Stadium. Lot to take in, but I'm not going to take up too much of your time. Just give us your reaction to what we've just seen, please.
Well, wow, right? Isn't that the reaction?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, we all thought Dubois could win, but I mean, this is the most uncompetitive fight Josh was ever been in. And I think that's my big takeaway from this.
Yeah, 100%. Look, we've seen Joshua lose before. Saw the shock defeat to Andy Ruiz a long time ago now. Saw him lose to Usyk twice. No shame in losing to Alexander Usyk. But I think the crazy thing about tonight is that I didn't hear anyone say they were picking Dubois to win. Literally not one person. And that wasn't anybody saying Dubois isn't very good or he's not capable. It was just people saying, I don't think this is going to happen. Why do you think Dubois won tonight and Joshua lost? Is it down to Joshua not being under preparing for this guy? Is it down to Joshua being past his best? Is it down to Dubois just being too good? What's like the main couple of reasons for you, Luke?
So I think there's a few things that come into play with this outcome. But one thing that stands out to me is Daniel Dubois had to go to that same place Anthony Joshua went to with the Joe Joyce fight. And honestly, with the Usyk fight, no one talks about this, but Daniel Dubois showed me a lot in that Alexander Usyk fight because he was doing extremely well and he was arguably winning the fight. There's the shot that some people think was low, some people was legal. I think that Dubois mentally checks out in fights,
Mm,
and he mentally checked out against Usyk. He could never come back. But those two losses with mental issues, he really built on those. And against a guy like Jarrell Miller, he could have easily checked out. He looked good.
yeah,
He
yeah,
beats Hrgovic when people expect him to lose. I think that Dubois came into this fight feeling he was the mentally stronger fighter, and having sparred him, I don't think he looked at him as the superstar boxer. He looked at a guy that he knew he could be, that he could hurt. And he did what you're supposed to do to superstars. He showed him no respect. I think the other problem with Joshua is he's always felt a little to me like Frank Bruno. And he's kind of starting to go down that Frank Bruno road of beloved folk hero, but not quite winning those big fights.
yeah, yeah. Look, I think it's to analyze Joshua's career is it's time for another video, but it'd be there's a lot to kind of there's a lot to take from tonight and where it kind of sits in his legacy. Again, Luke, I don't want to take up too much. I know it's getting late, but a couple more for you. Do you think we will see Anthony Joshua box again?
Of course, because money's real, and you saw how many fans came out. I'm sure if they
Mm.
did the rematch, there'd be excitement. But honestly, a fight between him and Wilder is still interesting because they're quite possibly both pretty close to being done.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
they're both coming off of humiliating knockout losses. Why not just do that fight? Because it's probably safer than putting these. I get that. See, here's the issue. Wilder just looks done to me. Joshua had rebuilt himself against credible opponents where I thought he was actually in between Hall of Fame and contender for Hall of Fame status. The way he lost tonight and the moment he had success, he deviated from the game plan and just threw right hands and overcommitted and walked into that knockout shot. I mean, he's looking kind of to me like a guy that's close to being done.
yeah,
And that's so to me, I think Wilder Joshua is the fight you have to make. Maybe if Fury looks like crap against Usyk, you do Joshua Fury. But to me, Joshua should just be in fun rich guy fights from now on. He
yeah.
shouldn't be in competitive
Mm.
best heavyweights out there fights.
Um, and in terms of when Joshua lost to Ruiz, of course we saw a rematch. When Joshua lost to Usyk, of course we saw a rematch. Do you think we'll see a rematch here? I'm not asking kind of if you want to see a rematch, but do you think that's what's gonna happen?
I mean, I one would expect it, right?
Yeah,
Because I mean, how do you really not have a rematch if you're the superstar at Joshua and just go, oh
yeah,
yeah, that guy knocked me? It seems like it would divide the British public and that it would probably make some people that were on the fence about Joshua become Dubois fans.
yeah,
So I feel like from a marketing and credibility standpoint, he has to do the rematch to kind of keep the popular vote amongst the fans.
Yeah, fantastic, Luke. And I've got one more for you.
Waste my time as much as you want. Don't worry.
No, fantastic. Joshua had a fantastic career. He had those two losses against Usyk, and then had those kind of comeback fights against Jermaine Franklin, Robert Helenius on 1 week's notice. There was the Ngannou fight, the Otto Wallin fight, and there were a lot of people saying Joshua's back or this new version of AJ. Do you think Joshua was really back, or do you think he was put in certain fights to make it look to make it look like he was back? And actually, he was done a couple of years ago, but there was still more money to be made. What's your assessment of that statement?
I mean, I think he was back because you don't beat a guy like Otto Wallin is a guy that if you're not fully back, you lose to guys like that, right?
Yeah,
And he beat him up, and that was very
yeah,
impressive. And I think the key word is people are going to, with Joshua, say things that are mean, like overrated. I'm going to use a different word. I think he's inconsistent. I
okay,
think the nights that he looks really great, you're like, man, this is someone that's special. He's got a cool demeanor about himself. There's something that you're drawn to and like about him. But then there's kind of something cringy about him. He's got that rich guy cringe, you know?
mm,
He's like looking at his wrist, like to symbolize he's looking at a clock. Like, I don't get it. It's just weird. Like, he does. It seems like the average person impacts Anthony Joshua more than Anthony Joshua impacts the average person, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that is, it seems like he cares a lot about what people say about his fights rather than going out and doing the fights. And I think the problem with Joshua is the inconsistency stems from him trying to appease people who I think are very meaningless in the big scheme of things to his success. So when I look at Joshua's rebuild after Usyk, by the way, he did good with Robert Garcia in the Usyk fight. Like all of his losses in a weird way, except for this one, he was in the fight. Like when he loses to Ruiz, he's arguably winning the fight. Usyk, he's doing good. He's doing good in the second fight. This was the first fight where he got hit, and it just looked like a guy who said, "This isn't fun. I don't really want to be here. When are you going to slow down so I can beat you up?" Like that's what I
yeah,
was getting. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
when Dubois was slowing down, I think he was like, "Oh, cool. This is when I get to get my Rocky moment. I'm just going to
yeah.
throw a lot of right hands. I'm going to hit you, and you're going to go out." And then he didn't get the script that he was going out. So I'd say that the big thing for me is Anthony Joshua has just been extremely inconsistent with a guy. See, another, now I'm just talking. When you have a guy that makes as much money as Joshua, there's always going to be a level of matchmaking to him because you don't want to mess up the church's money. He makes
Mm,
more money for a
mm,
company than other fighters make. So
yeah, yeah.
there's always going to be that type of stuff. But there's a talent component with Joshua that I think people overlook because he's so heavily marketed and people are so drawn to him.
Fantastic, Luke. Fascinating stuff. Really enjoyed listening to you as always. I'm sorry it's been so long since we've spoken. I'll make sure we speak again because I do enjoy speaking to you, Luke. Hope you enjoyed the fights. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your opinions, and I'll speak to you again very soon.
Right on.